Okay, so let's look at our second example of solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. It says in the instructions, solve the equation using the quadratic formula. Okay, so remember what I told you. The first step in solving a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula is simply to write the formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what you should do is you should memorize that, and the way most students memorize it is they sing the song. Okay, so let's sing the song real quick. Are we ready? X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, let's sing it one more time. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so don't ignore my terrible singing, but still you should pause the video and see if you can sing yourself. Also, if I were you, I'd go to YouTube and I would type in quadratic formula song, and I would watch a bunch of the students who made the quadratic formula song, and it'll help you memorize it. Okay, so we've written the formula right here, and now I'm going to identify that A equals the number in... Wait, I can't identify what A, B, and C are until my equation is in standard form. So what I need to first do is I need to subtract 9 on both sides to get my equation in standard form. So I've got x squared plus 2x minus 9 equals 0. And now that it's in standard form, I can identify that A equals 1 because that's the number in front of x squared, and B equals 2 because that's the number in front of x, and C equals negative 9 because that's the number right here all by itself. So the number in front of x squared is A, and the number in front of x, that's B, and the number by itself, that's C. So now we're going to plug A, B, and C into the formula for A, B, and C. Okay, so I got x equals whatever negative and then whatever B is. B is 2. Okay, plus or minus the square root of b all squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So I've set up the problem. From here forward, it's nothing more than simplifying it. Okay, so let's simplify it. All right, and this is where students normally make the mistake, is in simplifying. So I've got x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared is 4. Okay, now watch right here. Many students make a mistake here. I've got negative 4 times 1 times negative 9. Okay, when you do negative 4 times 1 times negative 9, that gives you positive 36. So right here I need to put plus 36, not minus 36. And that's all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, if you didn't understand as we went, pause and think about it for a second. So let's continue our work. Now what we need to do is we need to simplify what's under this radical. And so I have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, and 4 plus 36 is 40, and that's all over 2. Okay, so let's continue our simplifying. We need to simplify the square root of 40. Okay, so let's move over here to the right, and let's just think of square root of 40 is the same thing as the square root of 2 times 20, which is the same thing as the square root of 2 times 2 times 10, which is the same thing as the square root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. Okay, now square root is asking, because it's square root, because there's understood to be a 2 right here, okay, because it's square root, it's saying you're looking for pairs of 2. It's like go fish. Do you see any pairs? Well, these 2 pairs of 2 right here, okay, can come out, right? Because those 2 pairs of 2 are the same thing as the square root of 4 times 2 times 5. Well, what is the square root of 4? It is 2. So this is the same thing as 2 square roots of 10. Okay? So this right here, 2 square roots of 10, is the same thing as the square root of 40. So I'm going to rewrite this as x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 10 all over 2. And now we have simplified the problem as much as possible without splitting it in 2. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it in 2 based on this plus or minus. So here we go. Ready to split it in 2? So I've got x equals negative 2 plus 2 square roots of 10 all over 2. And I also have x equals negative 2. Now, notice in this one I use the plus sign, and this says plus or minus. So on this equation I need to use the minus sign. So I'll say minus 2 square roots of 10 all over 2. So those are my 2 answers, but they're not in their simplest form. Okay, let's keep simplifying. Now if you look on top, this has a negative 2 and this has a negative 2. Now, so since they both have a negative 2, I can factor the negative 2 out. So I'll have x equals, okay, negative 2 times something divided by 2. Now remember, when you factor, it's like dividing this by 2 and dividing this by negative 2. I'm sorry. And so when you divide this by negative 2, you get 1. And when you divide this by 2, you get negative 1 square root of 10. Okay, now notice what happens. These 2's cancel. And so you have x equals negative 1 minus the square root of 10 all over 1. Okay, and that's the same thing as x equals, and I probably shouldn't have factored out a negative 2, so let's distribute this negative 1 back in. So I'll have x equals negative 1 plus the square root of 10. And when there's a 1 on bottom, you don't have to write it. And so this is the exact answer. Say it with me. Exact answer. That's one of them. Okay, now if you want, you can type negative 1 plus the square root of 10 in your calculator, and it'll give you an approximation. So let me go do that. And so you can see right here, I went to my calculator and I typed negative 1 plus the square root of 10, and it gave me 2.162. And these dots mean that it's a decimal moving on forever. Okay, so that's one answer. Now let's move back up and let's simplify this one. Okay, so let's factor out, since this has a 2 and this has a 2, let's factor the 2 out. So I've got x equals 2 times, okay, now remember, when you factor something out, it's like you're dividing it by 2 and dividing this by 2, and so you end up with negative 1 minus the square root of 10 all over 2. And then as you look at it, these 2's cancel, and so you have x equals just negative 1 minus the square root of 10. Okay, now that is the exact answer. Say exact answer. I'm going to give you a chance to say it. And now I'm going to go to my calculator and type that in and see what it is as an approximate decimal. And so I went to the calculator and I typed in negative 1 minus the square root of 10, and it gave me negative 4.162. And so those are our 2 answers. Okay, if you look at the problem, x equals negative 1 plus the square root of 10 and x equals negative 1 minus the square root of 10. These are the 2 correct answers. If you wanted an approximation, 2.162 and negative 4.162 are the approximate answers. Now you can see in the directions, it said, round your answers to the nearest tenth, okay, if necessary. And so they're asking you for an approximate, right? They're asking you for an approximate, but Khan Academy is going to want the exact answers like this.